This story is based on the true life of Maryam Khail, an Afghan woman who dared to dream of freedom in a world that condemned women to silence. Born into one of Afghanistan's most influential families, Maryam witnessed from childhood the brutal fate reserved for women in her country. Her grandmother, her aunts, all victims of a tradition that imprisons bodies and souls. But Maryam was different. She dared to defy Soviet soldiers. She fled to the United States in search of freedom. She believed in love, and she paid the highest price a mother can pay, having her son ripped from her arms and taken to a country at war. This is a story of courage, pain, and the unwavering strength of a mother's love, a story that needs to be told.
There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. That day began like any other. The smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of the television in the background, my son playing in the living room with his toy cars, making those engine noises that only children know how to make. He was 2 years old, 2 years of smiles that made my heart forget the pain, 2 years of hugs that healed all the invisible wounds. I didn't know that would be the last time I would hear his laughter. My husband came home with that look. I knew that look. It was the look that came before the screams, before the punches, before the blood. But this time, it was different. There was something more dangerous in those eyes, something definitive. "I'm going to take him for a walk," he said. Picking up our son, my whole body screamed. Every cell warned me that something was wrong. I ran to them. I grabbed his arm. "No, he stays with me." That's when he smiled. A cold, calculated, victorious smile. "You'll never see him again." Those words still echo in my head every night. I tried to stop him. I screamed. I fought with all my might. But he was stronger. It always was. My son would cry, stretch out his little arms to me, and call out to me, "Mommy, Mommy!" And I couldn't protect him. I watched through the window as they got into the car. I saw his little face pressed against the glass, looking for me. I saw the car disappear around the corner, and I felt my world crumble. My husband took my son back to Afghanistan, to a country devastated by war, where the Soviets had left only ruins and death, where armed groups fought for power, where the Taliban began to impose its terror. He took my baby to hell and left me here, in what should have been a paradise of freedom. How did I get here? How did a girl who grew up in one of Kabul's most powerful families end up married to a monster? How could I, who defied Soviet soldiers in the streets and fled Afghanistan to save my life, end up trapped in a marriage that was worse than any prison? The truth is that my story began long before that day. It began with my grandmother, who was forced to marry at the age of 12. It started with my 3 aunts, whose lives were cut short before they even began. It started the day I opened my eyes and realized that, in Afghanistan, to be born a woman is to be born condemned. But I swore one thing that day they stole my son from me. I would find him, even if I had to cross the entire world, even if it meant facing armies, even if it cost me my own life, because a mother without her child is not alive. She is merely breathing. There are memories that should never belong to a child. I was 7 years old when I saw my grandmother being dragged by her hair in the courtyard of our house. The Kabul sun was high, hot, indifferent. The pomegranate trees swayed in the wind as if nothing was happening. And perhaps, for them, nothing was. Violence against women was as common as dust in the streets. My grandmother was shouting in Dari, but her words were lost among the shouts of her uncles. It was 3 men against a 60-year-old woman, 3 strong, well-fed men, respected by the community. And she, just a widow who dared to claim what was rightfully hers. I hid behind the marble pillar on the balcony. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I wanted to run to her. I wanted to scream. I wanted someone to do something. But nobody did anything. My father was there, standing, eyes downcast, hands clenched into fists that never rose. My other uncles, the younger ones, smoked silently, like those watching a boring play. The women of the house continued preparing the tea. The scent of cardamom floated in the air, mixed with the smell of injustice. It was on that day that I learned my first lesson about being a woman in Afghanistan. You can scream all you want, nobody will hear you. My grandmother's name was Shams, which means sun, but there was nothing bright about her life. She told me her story one night when I was 9 years old and couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of my bed, ran her hand through my hair, and whispered as if confessing a sin. I was 12 when I got married, she said. Her voice was like torn paper. He was 62. 12 years old. I tried to imagine. 12 years old was the age of my cousin Layla, who still played with dolls, who still ran through the garden chasing butterflies, who still believed in fairy tales. He already had other wives, my grandmother continued. I was the youngest, the weakest. They hated me because he chose me more often, as if I had a choice, as if being chosen were a prize and not a curse. She stopped talking. Her eyes filled with that tear that never fell. Afghan women learn early on to cry inwardly. I had 10 children. 7 survived. I worked like a mule my whole life. I cooked. I cleaned. I obeyed. And when he died, do you know what I got? She waited for my answer, but I was speechless. Nothing. His brothers came to take everything, the house, the land, even the jewelry he gave me. They said I was just a woman, that I had no right to anything, that I should be grateful they let me live in the back room. That night, lying in my soft bed, gazing at the high ceiling of our luxurious home, I understood something that startled me. We were born into the same family, but into completely different worlds, and the only reason for that was the year we were born, the decades that separated us, and the blind luck of being born when some things were beginning to change, but they weren't changing fast enough. My 3 aunts were sacrificed on different altars, but the god that consumed them was the same. Tradition. Aunt Parisa was the first I met, or rather, the first I didn't meet. She died before I was born, but her story haunted our house like a ghost no one wanted to see, but everyone felt. Parisa was 15 when she was sold. Yes, sold. My grandfather owed money to a carpet merchant, a rich and cruel man, known for beating his wives unconscious. My grandfather offered Parisa as payment. She begged, she cried, she tried to run away the night before the wedding. They found her. They brought her back, and the next day they handed her over like cattle. Parisa lasted 3 years. In the 3rd year of their marriage, her body was found at the bottom of a well. Her husband said she had tripped, that it was an accident. No one investigated. Women die all the time in Afghanistan. One more, one less, what difference does it make? Aunt Jamila lost sight in her right eye before she was 20. Her husband accused her of looking at another man at the market. It didn't matter that it was a lie. It didn't matter that she was just buying tomatoes. The punishment came that very night, a punch so hard that her eye swelled up to the size of a pomegranate. When it finally opened, she couldn't see anything anymore. Jamila lived like that for another 30 years, half blind, completely broken. I visited her sometimes with my mother. She lived in a dark house that smelled of old illnesses. Her hands trembled when she served tea. Her smile was a scar that never healed. And Aunt Zubaida? Well, Zubaida simply disappeared. No one spoke of her. It was as if she had never existed. There were no pictures of her on the walls. Her name was never mentioned at family gatherings. She was a black hole at the center of our history. I found out about her by accident. I found an old letter hidden in my grandmother's trunk. It was from her, asking for help, saying she couldn't take it anymore, that she'd rather die than continue living like that. The letter was dated. 3 weeks after that date, Zubaida disappeared. I never knew what happened to her, whether she ran away, died, or was sold to another country. My grandmother wouldn't talk about it. My father would change the subject. It was a secret the family buried along with her memory. But I kept that letter, hidden between the pages of my school notebook, as a reminder, as a prophecy, as a warning of what might await me. Our house in Kabul was one of the largest in the neighborhood. High walls of light-colored stone, gardens with fountains of crystal-clear water, rooms with Persian carpets that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. We were a prestigious family, powerful, influential, and yet the women of the house lived in gilded cages. My mother was different from my grandmother. She had studied. She knew how to read and write. She had opinions about politics, about art, about the world beyond the walls of our house. But even she knew where the line was that she couldn't cross. "You're lucky, Maryam," she told me as she brushed my hair. "You're going to study. You're going to have choices I never had. Your father is a good man." And my father was a good man. Compared to others, he was a saint. He didn't hit my mother. He didn't yell for no reason. He let us study. He believed that women had brains and that wasting them was a sin. But even good men have their limits in a country where tradition is law. I remember one afternoon when I asked him, "Dad, why can't Grandma keep Grandpa's house?" He was reading the newspaper. He slowly flipped through the pages and looked at me with those tired eyes that had already seen too much. "Because that's how it works, Maryam. But that's not right." "No," he agreed. "It's not. So why don't you do anything?" Silence. A silence that weighed more than all the unspoken words in our house. "Because I'm just a man, daughter. I can't change centuries of history on my own." At that moment, I understood something fundamental. Kindness is not enough. Compassion is not enough. As long as good men choose silence instead of action, nothing changes. I was the rebel of the family, the daughter who asked too many questions, who ran when she should have walked, who laughed loudly when she should have whispered, who looked men in the eye when she should have lowered her head. "You're going to have problems," my mother warned me. "Girls like you always have problems." But I couldn't be any different. Something inside me refused to accept that half of humanity was born to serve the other half. That being born with a different body meant having a lesser life. That my womb defined my worth. In school, I was the best student in my class. I loved math, history, geography. I dreamed of being a doctor, of traveling the world, of writing books, of doing something that mattered. "Dreams are dangerous for girls," my teacher told me one day. "The higher you fly, the more painful the fall." I didn't believe her. I thought it was just the pessimism of an older generation. I thought my life would be different, that I would be different. I didn't know that some destinations are like rivers. You can swim against the current as much as you want, but in the end, The force of the water always wins. The years passed like that. I grew up observing, learning, holding on to anger like someone saving coins for the future. Every injustice I witnessed was fuel. Every story of a woman destroyed was wood for the fire that grew inside me. And then, in the late 70s, when I was 16, everything changed. Rumors were coming from Kabul. A coup d'etat, communists in power, tension with the Soviet Union. My father was coming home later and later, increasingly worried. The conversations at the dinner table were hushed, nervous eyes darting around. "What's going on, Dad?" I asked one night. He looked at my mother. They exchanged that look adults exchange when they're deciding how much truth a child can take. "Difficult times are coming, Maryam, very difficult times." In the last week of that year, tanks began appearing in the streets. Soldiers in foreign uniforms, red flags with hammers and sickles. People whispered in Russian on street corners. My mother closed the windows of the house and drew the curtains, even though it was midday. "Don't go out alone anymore," she ordered. "Don't talk to strangers. Don't draw attention to yourself." But I was 16 years old, hot-blooded, fiery spirit, and with a lifetime's worth of pent-up rage from watching women being destroyed. I didn't know that this anger would put me in danger, that it would force me to run away, that it would change the course of my life forever. I didn't know that the Soviet tanks in the streets of Kabul were just the beginning. The worst was yet to come. December arrived in Kabul with snow and blood. The Soviet tanks didn't enter silently. They tore through our streets like knives tearing fabric. The clatter of metal tracks against the asphalt was a constant scream that kept us awake. During the day, soldiers with light eyes and hard faces patrolled every corner. At night, gunfire echoed through the city like macabre fireworks. 1979, the year Afghanistan ceased to be ours. I was 16 years old and I was watching my country being devoured by a war machine that spoke Russian and smelled of vodka and fear. Schools closed, markets emptied. People began to disappear in the middle of the night, taken away by men in gray uniforms who needed no reason to destroy lives. My family locked themselves inside the house. The windows remained closed even during the day. The heavy curtains transformed our bright mansion into a tomb of fabric and silence. My father forbade anyone from leaving unless absolutely necessary. "Keep your heads down," he repeated every day. "Don't draw attention, don't get involved, survive." But surviving in silence is another way to die. The stories reached us in whispers. Our neighbors, the Ahmadi family, had their house raided in the middle of the night. The soldiers were looking for weapons. They didn't find anything, but they took the eldest son anyway. 17 years old, an engineering student. He dreamed of building bridges. He never came back. Mrs. Farida, who sold bread on the corner, was found dead in an alley. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew what the soldiers did to women they found alone. But nobody spoke. Speaking was dangerous. Speaking could make you next. Professor Karim was executed in a public square because he taught Afghan history instead of Soviet history. They tied him to a post. They shot him in front of everyone. They left his body there for 3 days as a warning. The message was clear. This country is no longer yours. I watched it all with a rage that grew inside me like wildfire. Each story was fuel, each injustice was fuel. I couldn't understand how everyone accepted it, how they lowered their heads, how they whispered instead of shouting. "That's how you survive," my mother explained to me one night. Her hands trembled as she embroidered. "You scream, you die. It's that simple." "So you prefer to live on your knees?" I replied. She stopped embroidering. She looked at me with those eyes that had seen generations of women swallow screams. "Maryam, pride doesn't feed children. Courage doesn't bury the dead. Sometimes surviving is the bravest act there is." I didn't believe her. I was 16 years old. I had fire in my blood and truth on my tongue. I thought courage was about confronting, that heroism was about fighting, that dying for freedom was better than living in chains. I didn't know that there are fates worse than death. The Kabul market used to be my favorite place. The smell of spices mixed with fresh fruit, the sound of vendors shouting their prices, the colorful fabrics swaying in the wind. It was life in constant motion. But that winter, the market was a graveyard of hopes. Half the stalls were empty. People walked with their heads down, eyes on the ground, hurrying their steps. Soviet soldiers strolled among the stalls, taking what they wanted without paying, touching the women as if they were public property. I had gone to the market with my mother. She wanted to buy rice before it ran out. The lines were enormous. Everyone was afraid that the food would disappear, and fear makes people behave like wild animals fighting for survival. That's when I saw it. A Soviet soldier, no more than 25 years old, grabbed a girl by the arm. She was about 14, maybe younger. She was wearing simple clothes and carrying a basket of eggs. The soldier was laughing, saying something in Russian that I didn't understand, but his tone was clear. He started pulling her into an alley. She screamed. She asked for help. Nobody moved. They all kept walking, eyes on the ground, as if they saw nothing, as if that girl were invisible, as if her screams were just wind. My mother squeezed my hand. "Don't get involved," she whispered. "Maryam, don't get involved." But my body was already moving. I screamed. I don't know exactly what I screamed. Words in Dari that came from my soul before passing through my brain. Something about cowardice, about monsters, about how they were invaders and had no right to touch our girls, our homes, our dignity. The soldier let go of the girl. He turned to me. The entire market came to a standstill, absolute silence, as if time had frozen along with the snow on the mountains. He started walking towards me, his hand on the gun strapped to his belt. His eyes were as cold blue as a Siberian winter. He said something in Russian. It certainly wasn't an invitation for tea. My mother tried to pull me away. "Maryam, run! For God's sake, run!" But my feet were stuck to the ground. Half of me wanted to run. The other half wanted to spit in his face. And a third part, small and frightened, finally understood the gravity of what it had done. That's when an older man, a merchant we knew, stepped between us. He spoke in Russian. He said something that made the soldier laugh. He offered money. Cigarettes, vodka, anything to calm the situation. The soldier spat on the ground. He gave us one last look that promised consequences. And he walked away. The girl had already disappeared. Clever. My mother dragged me out of the market. Her nails dug into my skin. She didn't say a word the whole way home. But I could feel the storm brewing inside her. When we got home, she finally exploded. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea of the danger you've put this whole family in? I couldn't just stand there and—" "Yes, you could." She had never yelled at me like that before. "You could and you should. That girl is not your responsibility. Your family is your responsibility. So should we accept it? Should we just watch while they—" "Yes." tears streamed down her face now. Yes, Maryam, that's exactly what we must do, because the alternative is death. It's torture. It's you being dragged away in the middle of the night and us never knowing what happened to you. I had never seen my mother so broken, so scared, so defeated. Mother, I whispered, I can't live like this. I can't pretend I don't see. Then you're going to die, Maryam. It's that simple. Your lioness heart will kill you. My father arrived home an hour later. His face was pale. He went straight to his office and closed the door. I heard muffled voices. The phone ringing. More voices. When he left, he called me. I sat in the leather chair in front of his desk, the same chair where I used to sit when I was little and he taught me to read, where we did math homework together, where he told me stories about our ancestors. They've already contacted you, he said bluntly. My stomach turned to ice. What does that mean? It means that soldier reported the incident. It means you're now on a list. It means they're coming to get you. Dad, He raised his hand, asking for silence. I have a friend in the government. He owes me favors. He managed to get us some time. 24 hours, maybe 48 if we're lucky. Time for what? So you can leave the country. The world stopped spinning. What? No, Dad, I'm not leaving you. I'm not. You're going, he said. And his voice was broken in a way I'd never heard before. Because if you stay, they'll get you. And when they get you, they'll do things to you things that a daughter of mine shouldn't even know exist. Silence. The kind of silence that carries truth too heavy for words. I have a cousin in the United States, in Atlanta. He has his paperwork ready. You'll live with him until things calm down here. What if they don't calm down? My father looked away. Answer sufficient. That night, I packed a small bag. I took a few clothes, some books, a family photo, the letter from Aunt Zubaida that I had kept. My mother came into my room. She sat on the bed next to me. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just held my hand. You've always been different, she finally whispered. Ever since you were little, stronger, braver, more free. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize for being who you are, Maryam. Never apologize for it. She squeezed my hand. But understand, the world isn't ready for women like you. Maybe it never will be. So what do? You survive. You go to America. You live. And maybe, one day, you'll tell this story to your daughter, and maybe her world will be different. I slept that night, embraced by my mother, just like when I was a child and had nightmares. But this time, the nightmare was real, and there was no way to wake up. At the airport the next day, my father handed me an envelope. Documents, he said. Money, my cousin's address, important phone numbers. Good. And this, he placed something in my hand, a small turquoise stone. It belonged to your grandmother. She made me promise I'd give it to you when the time was right. What a moment. The moment when you need a reminder that comes from strong women, women who survived. I hugged my father. I felt his tears wetting my shoulder. Afghan men don't cry. But there, in that airport, my father cried like a child. Be free, Maryam, he whispered in my ear. Be everything we couldn't be. I went through security. I boarded the plane. I sat by the window and looked at Kabul one last time. The snow-capped mountains, the rooftops, the smoke rising in gray columns. I thought I was leaving hell behind. I thought I was flying to freedom. I didn't know I was just being transferred to a different prison. I didn't know my father had already decided my future. I didn't know that America harbored a nightmare far more personal, far more intimate, far more cruel than Soviet tanks could possibly represent. The plane took off, and along with it flew my last chance to choose my own destiny. Atlanta greeted me with a humid heat that clung to my skin. It was summer. The airport was huge, bright, full of people rushing in all directions, signs in English that I could barely understand, loud voices speaking too fast, the smell of fried food mixed with air conditioning. I was 16 years old and alone in a country I didn't know, speaking a language I barely understood, without knowing if I would ever return home. My father's cousin, Uncle Rashid, was waiting for me at the exit. He was a short man, big-bellied with an easy smile. He spoke English with a heavy accent and dared with exaggerated pride. He owned a Persian rug shop in downtown Atlanta. He said America was paradise on earth. Here you can be whoever you want to be, he said as we drove along wide streets filled with huge cars. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Everyone has the same opportunities. I looked out the window. Tall buildings touching the sky. Colorful billboards promising things I didn't know. Women walking alone down the streets, wearing shorts, hair blowing in the wind, laughing loudly. Freedom smelled of possibility. And for the first time in months, I took a deep breath. The first few months were magical. I studied English every day. New words were keys that opened doors. Each phrase I learned was a step away from Afghanistan and closer to something new, something of my own. Uncle Rashid enrolled me in a school. It was strange at first. The American girls were so different. They wore clothes my mother would call indecent. They talked to the boys without fear. They laughed loudly. They argued with the teachers. They had opinions about everything. "You are so lucky," I told a colleague one day. She looked at me, confused. "Lucky how?" "They can choose their lives, their futures, who they will marry." She laughed, as if I'd told a joke. "Of course we can. You can too." I smiled. I didn't say anything. I let her believe that we were the same, that all the girls in the world had the same choices. But I knew the truth. I was Afghan. And being Afghan meant carrying traditions on your back, even when you crossed oceans, even when you changed countries. Tradition doesn't need a passport. It travels within you. The phone rang one autumn afternoon, shortly after I turned 17. Uncle Rashid answered. He spoke in Dari for half an hour. His tone was serious, formal. When he hung up, he called me into the room. He was her father. My heart leaped. News from home was rare. The telephone lines in Afghanistan were controlled by the Soviets. Every word could be overheard. Every conversation could be a trap. "Is he okay? My mother, my siblings?" "Everything's fine, as well as can be expected." He paused. That pause that comes before life-changing news. He said, "It's time." "Time for what?" "About you getting married." The world stopped. It literally stopped. As if someone had pressed the pause button on my life. What? No. No, Uncle Rashid, I just turned 17. I'm studying. Your father found someone good. An Afghan boy. Respectable family. He's lived here in the United States for 5 years. He has his own business, educated, a good Muslim. But I don't want to get married yet. I want to finish school. I want... Maryam. Her voice was gentle, but firm. The voice of someone explaining the obvious to a stubborn child. You can't stay single forever. You're living at a relative's house. It's not appropriate. People talk. Your father is worried about your reputation. My reputation? I fled Afghanistan because I defied Soviet soldiers. Do you think I'm worried about my reputation? That's exactly why, he replied calmly. Because you're too rebellious. Your father is afraid you'll do something that can't be undone. Marriage is protection. It's stability. It's what Afghan girls do. But we're in America. The rules here are different. God's rules are the same everywhere. There was nothing to argue about. When tradition and religion were mixed, the discussion ended before it even began. I met Kadir on a Thursday. Uncle Rashid organized a formal dinner. His family, Kadir's family. Everyone dressed in traditional clothes, smelling of expensive perfumes and heavy expectations. Kadir was 28 years old, tall, handsome, dark eyes that seemed kind. He smiled a lot. He spoke well. He had studied business administration. He owned an import and export store. He earned well. He respected traditions, but he wasn't radical. Or at least that's what everyone said. He brought me flowers, red roses, an even number, which in Afghan culture signifies good luck. You are beautiful, he said in Dari. Your father wasn't exaggerating. The women sighed. Romance was in the air. What a well-mannered man. What a respectable young man. What a perfect choice. I looked at him, trying to find something wrong, some sign, some red flag, but I saw nothing. Just a polite Afghan man, dressed in a Western suit, doing all the right things. Can I speak with you privately? He asked after dinner. Uncle Rashid nodded. We went to the garden. Small lights hung from the trees, a full moon in the sky. I know you didn't choose this, Kadir began. I know arranged marriages aren't ideal. But I can promise I'll treat you well. I'll respect you. You can continue studying if you want. I'm not one of those old-fashioned men. What if I say no? He laughed, as if I had told a joke. Your father has already given his word, and you need protection. An Afghan girl alone in America. It's not safe. I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can. He moved closer. But you shouldn't have to do this. Let me take care of you. It sounded beautiful. It sounded like genuine concern. It sounded like a generous offer from a man who didn't know me but was willing to accept me. I didn't hear what was behind the words. I didn't realize that cuidar was just another word for controller. We got married 2 months later, right after my 18th birthday. Simple ceremony. Afghan community in Atlanta. White dress chosen by Uncle Rashid. Borrowed jewelry. Forced smiles for photos that would be sent to my father. Kadir held my hand during the ceremony. His fingers were warm and firm. When he said yes, his voice was strong and confident. When I said yes, my voice was a whisper that barely escaped my throat. At the party, everyone ate. They drank tea. They danced to traditional music. They laughed loudly. They celebrated another successful wedding, another Afghan girl properly married. Nobody asked if I was happy. No one asked if I loved that man. Nobody asked if I had a choice. The first week was normal. Kadir was polite. He left early for work and came home late. We had dinner together. We talked about superficial things. He gave me money to buy clothes. He said I could redecorate the house if I wanted. I want you to feel at home, he said. But that house would never be my house. It was his house, and I was just another piece of furniture he had acquired. The first signs were small, subtle. Things I told myself were nothing. He didn't like it when I wore jeans. I prefer when you wear traditional clothes. He didn't like it when I spoke English. We're Afghans. We should speak Dari at home. He didn't like it when I read books in English. What kind of book is that? Show me. He didn't like it when I spent too long on the phone talking to Uncle Rashid. You live with me now. You don't need to talk to them every day. Small things, reasonable requests, a husband's personal preferences. At least that's what I told myself. The first time happened 3 weeks after the wedding. I had gone to the supermarket. It took me longer than I expected. The lines were enormous. I ran into an old school friend. We talked for 10 minutes. That's all. 10 minutes. When I got home, Kadir was waiting. Where were you? To the supermarket. I told you I was going. It's been 3 hours. The lines were long and 3 hours to buy milk and eggs. His tone had changed. He was no longer the kind man who brought flowers. It was something different, something cold. I met a friend. We talked for a bit. Which friend? From school, Sarah. Sarah. He repeated the name as if it were poison. The American. Yes, she's American. So? He approached. I instinctively recoiled. Something primal in my brain screamed danger. And you shouldn't have American friends. They'll put the wrong ideas in your head. What wrong ideas? Ideas of independence, of freedom, that you can do whatever you want. He was very close now. He could feel his breath. But you can't, Maryam. You're my wife. You belong to me. I don't belong to anyone. That's when I saw her eyes change, as if a curtain had fallen, as if the mask had slipped. The first slap was so quick I didn't even see it coming. I fell to the ground. My face burned. My ears rang. The taste of blood was in my mouth. I looked up. He was standing there, looking at me with that expression. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hatred. It was something worse. It was possession. It was control. It was the certainty that he could do whatever he wanted. Get up, he ordered. I didn't move. I was in shock, trying to understand what had just happened, how the world had changed so quickly. I told you to get up. He pulled my hair. The pain was sharp, electric. He dragged me down the hallway. He kicked the bedroom door open. This is your last lesson for today, he whispered in my ear. But there will be many more until you learn your place. The door closed. And that night, in that room, in the house that was supposed to be my refuge, I learned the true meaning of prison. I learned that fences don't have to be made of iron. I learned that chains can be made of broken promises and shattered dreams. I learned that the worst kind of hell is the one that comes disguised as home. There are things the body learns before the mind accepts them. I learned to recognize his footsteps. The weight of them in the hallway said it all. Light footsteps meant the day had been good. Heavy footsteps meant a storm. And when he made no noise at all, when he came home in absolute silence, those were the worst nights. I learned to read the air. Tension had a smell. It had a texture. It tasted like metal in my mouth. I learned to make myself small, invisible, to say nothing that could be interpreted as a challenge, to agree with everything, to smile when told to cry silently when I was alone. I learned how to survive. The months turned into a blur of identical days. Wake up, make coffee exactly how he liked it, tidy the house, cook, wait, obey, sleep when allowed, start again the next day. The marks on my body told stories my mouth couldn't. bruises that turned yellow before fading, ribs that ached when I took a deep breath, cigarette burns hidden beneath long sleeves. "You fell," I would say, whenever Uncle Rashid noticed something. "You knocked on the door." I explained to the curious neighbor. "I'm clumsy." I lied to myself. Lies taste bitter. But you swallow them anyway because the truth could kill you. He didn't hit me every day. That would have been easier. Constant violence, you learn to expect it. But Kadir was strategic, intelligent, cruel in the most calculated way. Sometimes weeks would go by without anything. He was kind. He brought gifts, flowers, chocolates. He apologized for the times before. He swore he would change. He cried. He said he loved me, that it was just work stress, that I was the only good thing in his life, and I wanted to believe. God knows I wanted to. This time it will be different, I told myself. This time he really has changed. But the violence always returned, like the tide, like the seasons, like something inevitable and cyclical. A dish washed incorrectly, an answer given in the wrong tone, a look that lasted too long. Anything was an excuse. And on nights when there was no excuse at all, he would invent one. There were things he did that I can't describe in detail, things that happened in the darkness of the room, things that turned intimacy into torture, things that made me hate my own body because it had been used as a weapon against me. You can imagine. I don't need to say more. What they stole from me in those nights is forever stained and scarred, and the cruelest part is that the law called it marriage. Tradition called it an obligation. Misinterpreted religion called it a duty. But my body knew the truth. My body screamed even when my mouth was gagged. I found out I was pregnant one morning in March. The test showed 2 lines. I took another one. 2 more lines. I sat on the cold bathroom floor and cried. I didn't know if I was crying from fear or from some strange emotion I couldn't name. A baby, a life growing inside me, a life that would be half mine and half his. What do I do? I whispered to the void. God, what do I do? There was no response. There never is. Kadir was overjoyed when I told him. "A son!" he shouted. "It's going to be a boy. I know it's going to be a boy." He hugged me with a tenderness he hadn't shown in months. He kissed my forehead. He called me beautiful things in Dari. He said that now our family was complete, that I had finally fulfilled my purpose. My purpose, as if I were merely a vessel, an incubator for his heir. But I didn't argue, I just smiled, because pregnancy gave me something valuable, temporary protection. Afghan men don't hit pregnant women, not because they care about the woman, but because the child inside her is valuable property, and you don't damage valuable property. The following 9 months were the calmest since the wedding. He was still yelling, he was still insulting me, he was still controlling my every move. But his hands stayed away. And that, sadly and pathetically, was the best I could have hoped for. My son was born in the early morning hours of December. Pain. Hours and hours of pain that tore my body apart. Nurses who spoke English too fast. Bright lights, machines beeping. Kadir outside waiting to find out if his genes had produced a boy or a girl. And then he was born. Small, red, covered in varnish, crying with powerful lungs that seemed too immense for such a small body. "It's a boy," the nurse announced. They placed him on my chest, skin to skin, heart to heart, and something inside me broke, or fixed itself. I can't explain it properly. I looked at that crumpled little face, eyes closed, fists clenched, and I understood something fundamental about love. True love asks for nothing. It demands nothing. It doesn't control. It simply exists. Pure. Absolute. Unconditional. "Hello," I whispered to him. "I'm your mother, and I will love you for the rest of my life." He squeezed my finger with his tiny hand, so small, so fragile, so perfect. At that moment, I decided something. He would never see what I saw. He would never live what I lived. He would never learn to beat women like his father. He would never treat another human being as property. I would protect him. From everything. Even from his own father if necessary. The first few months with my son were the happiest of my life. Even in the depths of hell, he was my light, my sun, my reason to wake up. Each of his smiles erased hours of pain. Each of his laughs healed wounds I didn't even know I had. When I held him, when I breastfed him, when I sang lullabies in Dari, I felt complete. My little prince, I called him, my heart walking outside my body. But the more I loved him, the more jealous Kadir became. "You spend too much time with him," he complained. "He's a baby. He needs me." "I need you too, but you act like I don't exist." How could I explain that I wished he didn't exist? That I woke up every day hoping it had all been a nightmare? That the only reason I hadn't run away yet was because I didn't know how to do it with a baby in my arms? When my son turned 2, I started planning. I couldn't live like that anymore. I didn't want him to grow up thinking that was normal, that men could yell, hit, control, that women should accept it in silence. I started saving money. I'd take a few dollars here and there when I went shopping. I hid them in places Kadir never looked. Inside packages of sanitary napkins, at the bottom of flour cans, under the crib mattress. I contacted a women's shelter. I spoke with a social worker. I learned about American law, about restraining orders, about divorce. "You're going to need a lawyer," she told me. "I don't have money for a lawyer. We have resources, we can help." For the first time in years, I felt something I had forgotten. Hope. I planned everything carefully. Thursday. Kadir would be traveling to a business conference. He would be away for 3 days. Enough time to disappear. I would pack a small bag. I would gather important documents. I would go straight to the shelter. From there, I would begin the legal procedures. Custody, divorce, protection. "You're going to be free," I told my son while he slept. "We're going to be free." He didn't understand my words, but he smiled anyway, as if he could sense my hope. Tuesday. 2 days before the plan. I was putting away my son's clothes when Kadir arrived home early. I didn't hear his footsteps. I didn't hear the door. He simply appeared in the room. She looked at the half-open suitcase on the bed. He looked at the documents I had left on the dresser. He looked at me. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that comes before explosions. "What is that?" he asked. Calm voice. Dangerously calm. My mind raced. Lies. I needed lies. I was organizing old clothes to donate. And the documents. I needed certificates for the pediatrician. He walked to the dresser. He picked up the papers. He read them slowly. Our son's birth certificate, my passport, handwritten phone numbers. "Women's shelter," he read aloud. "Family lawyer." My heart stopped. "Kadir, I can explain. Were you planning to leave me?" The scream was so loud that my son started crying in the next room. "No! Take my son! Steal my son from me. He threw the papers on the floor. He advanced towards me. I ran. I tried to run, but he was faster. He grabbed me by the hair. He threw me against the wall. The pain exploded in my spine. You'll never leave me, he hissed in my ear. Never. Understand? You and this boy are mine forever. My son was crying in the other room, crying for his mother who couldn't come to him, for his mother who was being destroyed just a few meters away. I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget, Kadir said. And that night, he kept his promise. But the next day, when I woke up with my whole body aching and my heart more broken than ever, I discovered something worse than physical violence. My son wasn't in the crib. The house was empty. And on the kitchen table, a note. He's in a safe place, where you'll never find him. If you involve the police, you'll never see your son again. If you try to run away again, he'll disappear forever. The choice is yours. 3 days. 3 days staring at that note, reading and rereading it until the words lost their meaning, until my eyes could no longer produce tears. He is in a safe place. Safe. As if there were any safe place without a mother. As if a 2-year-old could understand why he woke up in a strange place without the voice that sang him to sleep, without the arms that rocked him when he had nightmares. Kadir wasn't answering the phone. He wasn't replying to messages. He had simply disappeared with my son, leaving only that piece of paper that was both a threat and a sentence. I sat on the floor of my son's room. I held his teddy bear. It still smelled like him. That sweet baby smell mixed with milk and innocence. "Where are you, my love?" I whispered to the emptiness. "Mommy is here. Mommy will find you." But I didn't know how. I didn't know where to begin. On the 4th day, Kadir called. His number appeared on the phone screen. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. "Hello, Kadir. Where is my son?" "Our son," he corrected. Calm voice, controlled, venomous. "And he's fine, with his family." "Which family? Where?" "You don't need to know. I have the right. I'm his mother." "You were his mother," he said, and in those 4 words he carried the weight of the world. But mothers don't abandon their children. Mothers don't plan to run away and take children away from their fathers. "You hit me, I disciplined you because you needed it, because you're stubborn, rebellious, dangerous." Pause. "But now you're going to learn." "Kadir, please, please, he's just a baby. He needs me. He needs a stable home, tradition, real Afghan values, not this Americanized version you were trying to create." My heart was breaking in real time. "What do you want?" "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand that your actions have consequences." His voice was icy. "I want you to suffer as you made me suffer. I want you to feel the emptiness I would feel if I had lost my son." "You haven't lost anything. I'm losing everything." "Welcome to hell, Maryam, the one you created." The call dropped. I called back. Voicemail. Again, 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 until the number is disconnected. I found out on the 5th day through Uncle Rashid. He appeared at my door, his face pale, his hands trembling. He took the boy to Afghanistan. The world spun. I had to hold on to the wall to keep from falling. "What? How? No, 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 no." "He flew yesterday. Someone from the community saw him at the airport with the child. He said he was going to visit his family." Afghanistan. My country. My country. shattered by war, where the Soviets had left only ruins and landmines, where armed groups fought for power, where the Taliban was gaining ground day by day, imposing its medieval laws. He took my baby to hell on earth. I need to go there, I said. I need to bring him back. Uncle Rashid looked at me with pity. Maryam, you can't. The country is in a civil war. It's too dangerous. I don't care. He's my son. And you think you're just going to be able to go in there, grab the child, and leave. He has influential family. He has connections. He has money. And you have nothing. I have something he'll never have. My voice was firm now, determined. I have a mother's love, and that's worth more than all the money in the world. I spent weeks trying to find a way. I called embassies, human rights organizations, lawyers specializing in international custody. Everyone said the same thing. Difficult, almost impossible. Afghanistan had no extradition treaties with the United States. It did not recognize decisions by American courts, especially in cases involving Afghan parents and cultural traditions. In cases like yours, a lawyer explained to me, the father always has the advantage, especially if he's in Afghanistan. The laws there, well, they favor men. So you're telling me there's nothing I can do? That my son was stolen and I just have to accept it? I'm saying that legally, your options are limited. And illegally, he looked at me for a long moment. I can't help you with that. I found an organization that worked with Afghan refugee women. A social worker named Lisa listened to me for 3 hours. She cried with me. She hugged me when I broke down. I'll be honest, she said. As cases like yours rarely end well, but it's not impossible. I know women who have succeeded. It took years. It cost them everything they had, but they succeeded. Years. My voice broke. He'll forget about me in years. So you need to act fast and smartly. She handed me some names, numbers, contacts. These people work in gray areas. They help families cross borders, locate children, bring back what was lost. It's not cheap, it's not safe, but it's an option. I looked at the papers in my hands, names I didn't recognize, phone numbers from distant countries, an underground network of people who did the impossible for a price. How much? Everything, she replied. It will cost you everything you have, and maybe more. I have nothing. Then you'll find it. She held my hands. Because the alternative is giving up, and you don't seem like the type to give up. I worked 3 jobs. In the morning, she cleaned houses. In the afternoon, she waited tables in a restaurant. At night, she translated documents from Dari to English. She slept 4 hours a night. She ate once a day. She saved every penny. My body was exhausted. My mind was fragmented. But my heart had purpose. Every dollar saved was a step closer to my son. Every sacrifice was proof of my love. Every sleepless night was an investment in the future where we would be together again. It took him 8 months to save enough money, 8 months during which my son grew up without me. He learned words I didn't hear. He took steps I didn't see. He had nightmares I couldn't soothe. 8 months wondering if he still remembered me, if he still looked for me when he woke up in the middle of the night, if he still called Mommy in his dreams. I contacted the people using the names Lisa had given me. I explained the situation. I sent the money. I waited. We've located the child, the voice on the phone said in heavily accented English. He's in Kandahar province, with his paternal family. Good health, as far as we know. My heart exploded with relief and despair at the same time. Can I see him? Can I go there? I don't recommend it. Kandahar is now Taliban territory. A woman alone, very dangerous, especially a woman who doesn't live under their rule. I don't care about danger. It should. Dead people can't save children. So what do? Long pause. You wait. We observe. When there's an opportunity, we move. But it may take time. How long? Months. Maybe years. Afghanistan has no rules right now. It's chaos. We need to be patient. Patience. As if I could be patient when every day away from my son felt like an eternity. A year passed. Then 2. Information arrived in dribs and drabs. He was doing well. He was growing. He spoke Dari fluently. English was beginning to fade from his memory. Does he ask about his mother? I always wondered. They told him, "You died." The voice on the phone replied, "Car accident, that's what the family says. Dead." My son thought I was dead. While I was alive, breathing, bleeding, fighting, he wept over an empty grave. I need him to know, I pleaded. I need him to know I'm alive, that I haven't abandoned him. Very risky. If the family finds out you're trying to contact them, they'll move, and then we'll lose him again. So what do? Just wait forever. You do what every mother does. You don't give up. Never. It was in the 3rd year that the opportunity arose. Political changes, the voice explained. The Taliban is consolidating power. Families are being relocated. There's a window of opportunity, small, but it exists. What do I need to do? You need to go there. In person, there are people who can guide you, hide, take you to the child. But after that, you need to leave the country quickly, very quickly. What if we don't succeed? So you never go out, or you go out without him, and he disappears forever. There was no choice. There never was. When? 3 weeks. Have the money ready, passport, courage, pause, and prayers. You'll need them all. I looked at the calendar on the wall. 3 years. 1,095 days since I last saw him. 1,095 nights sleeping in an empty room. 1,095 mornings waking up with a broken heart. But maybe in 3 weeks, I grabbed the photo of him that I always carried with me. 2 years old, baby smile, bright eyes, innocent, perfect. "Mommy's coming," I whispered to the camera. "I don't know how. I don't know if I'll manage it. But I swear, my love, I swear on everything that is sacred, I will bring you back home." The photo didn't answer, but in that silent room, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope, dangerous, fragile, desperate. But there is still hope. 3 weeks later, I boarded a plane bound for Pakistan. From there, I would cross the border into Afghanistan illegally. I would pass through Taliban-controlled territory. I would risk everything. But when you're a mother, everything is just another word for anything for your child. And I was ready to give anything, even my own life. Because a mother without her child isn't truly alive anyway. It simply exists. And simply existing is not enough. Not when there's a heart beating on the other side of the world that carries half of yours. Not when there's a small voice that might still remember the sound of yours. Not when there's a chance, however small, of making the impossible happen. The plane took off, and along with it, my last bet flew away. My last hope, my last chance to be a mother again.
Maryam Khail's story is more than the journey of a woman searching for her stolen son. It is the silent testimony of millions of Afghan women who live lives imprisoned by traditions that confuse control with love, obedience with respect, and submission with virtue. Maryam was born into one of Afghanistan's most privileged families. She was educated. She had opportunities that most Afghan girls would never know. But not all the wealth in the world can buy freedom in a place where being a woman means carrying invisible chains from the very first breath. She witnessed the destruction of her grandmother, married at 12 to a man 50 years her senior. He saw his 3 aunts sacrificed on the altar of tradition, one sold to pay debts, another beaten until she lost her sight, the third simply disappeared, erased from history as if she had never existed. Maryam vowed that things would be different, that she would escape this fate, that her life would have meaning beyond serving the men of her family. And for a brief moment, it seemed possible. She defied Soviet soldiers in the streets of Kabul. She fled to the United States. She believed in the promise of freedom, but she learned the hard way that oceans aren't enough to escape traditions, that geographical freedom doesn't guarantee personal freedom, that arranged marriages are portable prisons that travel with you. The man who should have protected her became her tormentor. The home that should have been a refuge turned into a battlefield. And when she finally found the courage to escape, when she finally planned her freedom, she paid the highest price a mother can pay. Her son was ripped from her arms and taken to a country at war, to territory controlled by the Taliban, where women are property and children are tools of control, where mothers have no rights and love has no legal value. But Maryam did not give up. While others would have given up, she fought. She worked 3 jobs. She slept 4 hours a night. She saved every penny. Every dollar was a step closer to her son. Every sacrifice was proof of a love that transcends borders, wars, and impossibilities. For 3 years, she lived in limbo between hope and despair. 3 years receiving fragmented information. 3 years knowing that her son thought she was dead. 3 years wondering if he still remembered her voice, her scent, her lullabies. And then an opportunity. Small, dangerous, almost impossible. But when you're a mother, as impossible is just another word for try it no matter what. Maryam's complete journey, the details of her mission in Afghanistan, whether she managed to rescue her son, whether she survived Taliban territory, whether she finally found the freedom she always sought, all of this is documented in the book that inspired this story. This was just a part of Maryam Khail's incredible journey. To learn all the details, every twist and turn, every moment of courage and despair, check out the first pinned comment for complete information about her story. But before you go, think about this. How many Maryams are there right now? How many women are living in prisons that look like homes? How many mothers have been separated from their children by men who confuse possession with love? And more importantly, if it were you, if it were your child, how far would you go? What oceans would you cross? What dangers would you face? What sacrifices would you make? A mother's love knows no boundaries. It respects no laws. It doesn't bend before impossibilities. It is the most powerful force in the universe. And Maryam's story proves it. If this story touched your heart, if you felt every pain, every hope, every moment of despair and courage, subscribe to the channel and share it. Someone needs to hear this today. Someone needs to know they are not alone, that there is strength in places that seem broken, that there is hope even in the deepest darkness, and a mother's love always finds a way, always.